I'm going to bring you a special interview now here on France 24, and you will remember that earlier this week the UN released a report on the allegations of sexual violence committed on October the 7th during the Hamas attacks on Israel and its aftermath. The United Nations Special Representative of the Secretary General on Sexual Violence in Conflict, Pramila Patten, found responsible grounds to believe that Israeli women were subjected to sexual violence, including rape, gang rape and sexualized torture. Now, the letter Israel sent to Patten inviting her to visit and look into those allegations claimed that hundreds of women had been raped. Her findings reveal those incidents to be far fewer, but she also said that the true prevalence of such atrocities may take months or years to emerge and may never be fully known. Well, she sat down in New York with our correspondent there, Jessica Le Masurier.
We found clear and convincing evidence that hostages during captivity were victims of sexual violence, including rape and other forms of inhuman and degrading treatment and sexualized torture. And we have reasonable ground to believe, based on the information that we received firsthand from released hostages, that this sexual violence could still be going on.
I just have to pull you up here. In your press conference, you said that you did not have evidence, but findings. Could you clarify, please?
I did not collect evidence. I collected information. My mission was about a gathering, analysis, and verification of information, because I did not conduct an investigation per se, and I do not have an investigative mandate. My findings are based on first-hand information, interviews of recently released hostages. With regard to the 7th of October attacks, I did not meet with survivors of sexual violence, although I received information from sources that I cannot disclose for confidentiality reasons, that there is a handful of survivors who are unfortunately not willing to speak out. They are undergoing very specialized trauma treatment and are very disoriented.
What were your findings in terms of the alleged rapes or sexual violence committed on October 7th?
We have reasonable grounds to believe that sexual violence did happen on the 7th of October attacks in at least 3 locations. It doesn't mean that it did not happen in other locations, but at least we were able to verify reports of sexual violence from credible eyewitnesses, and multiple cases of sexual violence, including rape and gang rape, and in at least 2 cases, the rape of dead bodies of women. Mostly, again, women found partially or totally naked, often with their hands tied and bound, sometimes tied to structures like poles and trees with gunshots. And we, for example, had to closely review those 5,000 photos, 50 hours of raw footage. Our forensic pathologist saw that there was a lot of misinterpretation of the forensic material by some untrained first responders. There was a lot of corpses with severe burn damage, which made also a forensic interpretation of sexual violence very difficult.
Now, Israel is already using your report to argue against a ceasefire. To what extent are you concerned that your report's being weaponized, that women's rights are being weaponized?
My report should not in any way be misused to justify the denial of a humanitarian ceasefire. My report should not be instrumentalized in any way to continue with this bloodshed. The end goal of my mission is not a war without rape. it is a world without war. And I echo the call of the Secretary General for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire for the captives, the hostages still in captivity, but also for all these civilians in Gaza, the women, the men, the children, the elderly, the people with disabilities, the innocent civilians who are paying a heavy price. And as the Secretary General has repeatedly mentioned, nothing can justify the 7th of October attacks. But on the other hand, nothing can justify the collective punishment of the people of Gaza.
Please could you also tell me about your findings regarding the sexual crimes or violations committed against Palestinian detainees being held by Israel? I
received very disturbing reports, UN-verified information of reports of different forms of sexual violence reportedly committed by IDF soldiers and settlers against Palestinian women and men, mainly in detention settings. And that is why, whilst working on the scope and parameters of the mission, I insisted with the Israeli authorities on a visit to occupied West Bank, which I did. And the information that I received whilst in Ramallah was indeed very, very disturbing, including from the recently released detainees who spoke to threats of rape during house raids, at checkpoints, but also in detention, the prolonged forced nudity, which is totally inappropriate, strip searches, and other forms of sexual harassment, which would reach the threshold of conflict-related sexual violence.
You have recommended that there be a thorough investigation that finds evidence. How can that happen if Israel won't let the UN's investigators in?
I do hope that eventually the government of Israel will see the added value of a fully fledged investigation by very competent bodies of the United Nations. These are bodies that can do justice to the people of Israel for what they suffered on the 7th of October and its aftermath.